엄청난 쓰레기들이 많습니다. 당신이 하나 주신 게 수천 마리의 종을 생명을 살릴 수가 있습니다. 나는 쓰레기 더미에서 생명을 발견하는 그리너다.
Your gateway to Korea, Simply K-pop. Hello, I'm your Simply K-pop MC Daegu of AB6. Hello.
And hello, everybody. I'm your special MC, Alicia of Eunice. Nice to see you. Then this week's Simply K-pop Gateway to Korea. Don't miss out.
어서 오세요. 오셨네.
Thank you for joining us on this Sunday. It's 6 p.m., April 6th here in Seoul. I'm Yoon Jung-min. As the country enters the race for an early presidential election, Assembly Speaker Yoon Suk today proposed a referendum on the election day to revise the constitution. It'll be aimed at reorganizing power structure. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
Calls for constitutional reform surface almost every election season in South Korea. But this time, National Assembly Speaker Yoon Suk says it must happen and soon. He's pushing for a nationwide referendum to take place within the next 60 days, alongside the upcoming presidential election triggered by President Yoon Suk Yeol's impeachment. Speaking on Sunday, Woo emphasized that although the declaration of martial law was ultimately blocked, it revealed serious vulnerabilities in the country's democracy.
To break this vicious cycle, we must pave the way before the new president's term begins. Now is the perfect time to achieve constitutional reform, as the public's call for decentralization of power, popular sovereignty, and national unity has never been clearer. I propose holding a national referendum on constitutional amendment on the same day as the upcoming presidential election.
To move the process forward, Speaker Woo also proposed launching a special committee dedicated to constitutional amendments. He said the first round of reform aimed at aligning with the presidential election timeline would focus on the division of power. A second round of proposed changes could follow during next year's nationwide local elections. When asked whether he was referring to a 4-year presidential term with the possibility of re-election similar to the US model, Woo said it's an idea both major parties appear open to. However, he emphasized that the specifics will be discussed within the newly proposed committee. In the meantime, the Democratic Party of Korea held a press conference announcing that preparations for the upcoming presidential election are now underway. Speaking to reporters on Sunday, DP Secretary General Kim Yoon-duk said that while there are no specific updates yet, the party is taking care of the practical aspects needed to ensure a smooth campaign launch once the election date is set. He also urged acting President Han Duck-soo to announce a date without delay. The People Power Party also held a closed-door, full-floor meeting on Sunday. Key agenda items likely included setting the rules for the party's presidential primary and addressing the fallout from the impeachment of its former leader. Unlike the Democratic Party, the PPP has no clear frontrunner for the upcoming presidential race. Meanwhile, following the Constitutional Court's decision to uphold the impeachment on Friday, acting President Han Duck-soo is expected to announce the presidential election date during Tuesday's cabinet meeting. Most expect the vote to be held on June 3rd, the final day within the 60-day limit set by law. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
As the Constitutional Court has removed President Yoon Suk Yeol from power, the now former leader has to vacate his office and residence. Our correspondent Woo Soo-young tells us more.
Silence takes over the presidential office in Seoul's Yongsan-gu district. Following the Constitutional Court's ruling Friday, removing President Yoon Suk Yeol over his martial law declaration last December, the nation's top office is no longer the centre of power and governance. A regular Sunday meeting of senior presidential secretaries did not take place this weekend, despite having continued throughout Yoon's impeachment trial. The secretaries had in fact submitted their mass resignation to acting President Han Duck-soo, who turned them down and requested they remain in their positions. Still, the air of resignation is pervasive. After Friday's ruling, the phoenix flag, the symbol of the head of state, was taken down from the main flagpole. The large digital display showing images of Yoon has also faded to black. The presidential office's website was taken offline on Saturday, and Yoon's social media pages have been updated to reflect his change of status. Meanwhile, state authorities will begin transferring official documents to the presidential archives, which is required by law at the end of every administration. The Interior Ministry said Sunday on-site inspections will begin next week on 28 venues, including the Presidential Office, the National Security Council, the Presidential Security Service, and other relevant advisory bodies. Also packing up, the former leader is preparing to soon move out of the official residence. It was initially expected Yoon and his wife would return to their high-rise apartment across the river as early as Saturday, given that former President Park Geun-hye left the presidential quarters 56 hours after her impeachment was upheld in 2017. However, a source told Arirang News the arrangements will take some time and ruled out a move the same weekend. Yoon's believed to be considering other venues further away from the city centre, considering his security arrangements as well as his 13 pets. The Presidential Security Service also said it has not received any detailed plans so far, but will follow legal protocols once the relocation is confirmed. By law, the PSS provides basic personal protection for all, even ousted presidents, once they return to civilian life. The presidential office has not issued any official statements following Friday's fateful ruling, retreating tacitly from the public eye. As such, the dismantling of the Yoon administration ensues quietly. Woo Soo-young, Arirang News.
On the first weekend after the leader was removed from office, public rallies stayed divided. Shin Ha-young takes a look.
Protests both in support and against the impeachment continued throughout the weekend, even after Friday's final verdict. Despite the rainy weather on Saturday, people gathered near Gwanghwamun Square in Seoul. Those who had called for former President Yoon Suk Yeol's impeachment looked cheerful, holding signs that said democracy has won. Another rally celebrating the impeachment was held near City Hall Station. Participants cheered, saying the people had won, and called for the removal of what they described as insurrectionist forces.
Turning weapons on the people is unforgivable. Shouldn't those behind the rebellion and everyone involved be investigated and punished?
People who opposed the president's impeachment also took to the streets. They held signs reading "invoking the rights to resist" and chanted, "The impeachment is a fraud and invalid." Some said they couldn't accept the court's decision and called for Yoon to return to office.
We'll keep standing up for President Yoon Suk Yeol and the rule of law in the Republic of Korea.
Police set up barricades around the Gwanghwamun area to prevent clashes between people for and against the impeachment. As of Saturday evening, the Korean National Police Agency lowered Seoul's emergency response from the second highest level, which allows for 50% mobilization of police forces, to a level where officers are allowed to take leave but must remain on standby and ready to respond if needed. 신하영, Arirang News.
The New York Times has assessed that the past 4 months have demonstrated the resilience of South Korean democracy. The paper noted that the rise and fall of now former President Yoon Suk Yeol revealed a vulnerability but also a resilience in South Korean democracy, adding that the public was ready to fight for it. It highlighted the events of December 3rd, when troops sent to the National Assembly hesitated as citizens stood in their way. It also cited scholars who warned that if martial law can occur in a country seen as an exemplary case of democratization in Asia, then it could happen elsewhere too. It went on to emphasize that South Korea's democracy was fought for through decades of resistance against authoritarian rule. In other news, a helicopter involved in firefighting efforts has crashed while responding to a wildfire in the southeastern city of Daegu, killing the pilot. According to local fire and safety authorities, the aircraft crashed approximately 100 meters from the site of the fire. The wildfire broke out at around 3:12 p.m. on Sunday, and the Korea Forest Service deployed 5 helicopters and other firefighting resources, bringing the fire under control an hour later. Authorities have not yet been able to determine the cause of the fire and plan to launch a full investigation into the crash. Korea is reviewing options to tackle U.S. President Trump's major tariffs on America's trading partners. Separately, it's preparing a financial support package worth $2 billion to help industries hit by the trade war. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
As the United States imposes a 25% reciprocal tariff on South Korean goods, Seoul is cautiously preparing its negotiation strategy, including plans to dispatch its top trade official to Washington. The government is reportedly analyzing broader trade dynamics, as the U.S. appears to have based the new tariffs on trade surpluses rather than a detailed policy review. With countries like Vietnam also facing steep duties, companies such as Samsung, which produces more than half its global smartphone supply there, may be forced to restructure their supply chains. Seoul is closely watching how other major players, including Japan and the European Union, approach negotiations with Washington, all while seeking to reduce its trade surplus with the U.S. without undermining the foundations of its export-driven economy. In response to what officials are calling a tariff shock, the South Korean government is preparing a financial support package worth nearly 3 trillion Korean won, or over $2 billion, aimed at stabilizing key industries hit hardest, including automobiles and auto parts. The package, expected to roll out within next week, will be delivered through state-run policy finance institutions such as the Korea Development Bank. Automobiles remain South Korea's top export to the United States, with nearly half of the country's total auto shipments headed there last year. Auto parts exports to the U.S. also hit a record high, underscoring the critical role of these sectors in bilateral trade. Amid these developments, domestic banks are rapidly tightening credit risk controls and reassessing their loan portfolios. In a notable example, one bank recently reclassified the secondary battery industry as high risk, a move that signals a broader shift in risk assessment across the financial sector. With U.S. tariff policies continuing to evolve and uncertainty deepening, South Korean authorities and financial institutions are bracing for prolonged economic turbulence. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Protesters gathered in more than 1,000 locations across the United States in what has become the largest show of opposition since President Trump's inauguration. More than 150 civil groups united on Saturday for rallies under the banner of the Hands Off movement, voicing strong objections to his administration's agenda. Key points of contention included federal downsizing, immigrant deportations, and proposed cuts to healthcare programs. Solidarity demonstrations also broke out in cities around the world, including London, Paris, and Berlin, just days after Trump announced sweeping reciprocal tariffs, targeting nearly every nation. That does it for us at this hour. Thank you for watching. Arirang News will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Korea time.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If